What's up, you guys? Welcome back. I'm going to walk you through what goes in my pack on just a general backcountry, more like free ride oriented day. I'll do a different video for more high alpine and the technical kit and that kind of thing. Just take this as what I pack in my pack. It's not necessarily prescriptive as to what everybody else should do. Works for me. So I'll go through some of the extra kit and then we'll get into the rescue and first aid stuff a little bit. So on the kind of extra backup side, I used to carry really big heavy mitts and leave them at the bottom of my pack, but I found that I never used them, even on days when my hands were cold, because they were such a cumbersome and not that easy to work with. So now I've gone with these Hestra. It's about the same weight of glove that I'm in a lot of the time, so it's not that big a deal to wear them. I can still do all the things that I need to do. So I wear them more, and it's nice to change into dry gloves sometimes. And then this is first aid kit, tarp and repair kit, which I'll get to in just a moment. This is this thermos that I bought online. It's called Zojirushi. It's a Japanese brand, and from everything I've ever used, this is by far the lightest and most thermally efficient little thermos I've ever had, and I love it. I love it. So yeah, I just found it on the internet. Highly recommend it. I'm really psyched on this Jewelbore Peak helmet. One of the things that I'm looking for in a helmet is I really don't want the profile to be very big. The weight is one thing, but if the helmet's really tall, it's such a pain to get it in a narrow pack, which mine is, and I like that. It skis better. So this profile, and then it's really light. I stripped out all of the extra fuzzy bits and insulation because I'm going to be wearing a hood underneath it, so that's where my insulation comes from. And then I pretty much only take goggles on POW days because if it's good viz, I'm probably just going to ride my glasses because I think that they're just big and bulky. But these are super light. I'm really psyched on these Jewelbore Tokyos. And then generally I think 0.6 of a liter works really well for my body out in the mountains. But keep in mind that different people are going to have different habits, so I'm not saying that's how much water you should bring. Bring as much water as you want. And then on occasion, if I have a big day or if it's a really hot day, then maybe I'll take this little Hydro Pack, and that's nice for carrying just a little bit of extra water because it only obviously takes up as much room as you've got water. And then Puffy, this is a Patagonia Dust Light. This is really on the lighter end. And I think that a lot of times we can end up packing the Puffy that's going to be comfortable to wear. But really what we should be thinking about is what would I survive in, or what would the night be like if I broke my leg and I was stuck out there. So if I'm going any place that's a bit deeper into the mountains, I tend to actually go a little bit heavier on Puffies. So that's that. And then a couple things that I keep in my pack. So inside here, there's a Velcro sleeve, and that's where the back panel of the bag is. So I use that for keeping things that I don't intend on using. And the one thing I always have in there is this little Capilene Air base layer. And what I like is it's really stretchy. So if I had to give it to somebody else who's injured, I'm pretty small, so somebody else who's larger, it would work for. And I think we really focus way too much on puffy layers, but if somebody gets hurt and they're wet, sweaty, then putting more puffy layers on isn't gonna fix that. You've got to get them in dry clothes. So for me, keeping a spare base layer is really, really low cost insurance that takes up almost very little room and super light. So there's that. And let's see, a couple other things. Obviously, shovel and probe. I go with a 300 centimeter probe, and then I go back and forth. My everyday shovel is pretty big, but admittedly, if I'm going into the high alpine, I'm probably gonna take a smaller shovel. I'm also a really much smaller guy, weigh 140 pounds, so I can move a lot of snow more efficiently by taking smaller chunks and moving them quicker rather than just trying to heave huge chunks. So I feel pretty good about carrying a smaller shovel in avalanche terrain, but still, if I'm going to be digging a lot in the snow, then a bigger shovel is pretty helpful. And then depending on the time of year, I may be carrying a saw. This early season, probably carrying a saw. And then a couple extra things that I keep handy. So in the side pockets, my favorite Hawaiian sunscreen. and a couple of ski straps. We all know how useful those things are for loads of different tasks. And then over here, a goggle, cloth, and this absorbent pad, and hand warmers, and a metal edge ski scraper. I think that can be really key, especially if your skins get bunged up, then the edge can really clean them, and that can be really helpful. Okay, so now that's the packing kit. We'll move that out of the way, and let's look a little bit at the first aid and rescue stuff. Okay, so this is my first aid kit. And again, don't take this as prescriptive. This is what works for me. So I won't go through all the details of my first aid supplies. You can find those easily online. I'll just pull out the things I think can maybe get forgotten or I've learned about the hard way. So one of those things is a headlamp. And I used to carry this ultra dim little emergency headlamp. And when I did have to ski out, it was actually really simple terrain in the woods. But I really regretted having this little baby headlamp. And this one's tiny, this little pencil headlamp, but this thing I've skied with, I've checked it, and it really lights it up enough to where I can really get out of simple terrain, let alone if things go sideways and you're in the high peaks, you really want to be able to see. InReach that pairs with my phone, that's become part of my kit. In the guiding industry now, tourniquets are part of our kit, and so I've adopted just bringing one and just leaving it in there. And I think that from what I understand, it's really very, very difficult, if not impossible, to stop big bleeds without a tourniquet. So that's become part of the kit. More standard first aid stuff, a CPR mask. I have taken to carrying a very light little inflatable pad, and this is made by Climate. I just researched an ultralight inflatable pad, and I've had this thing for 7 or 8 years. And when you get injured, it's crazy the difference that it makes to be elevated off the snow on a pad. All the puffy layers in the world won't mean much if they're laying on the snow. So for me, this little thing has been really worth it. Cravats, just other standard first aid things. Okay, let's move that stuff aside. And this is an 8-foot by 8-foot hyperlight tarp. And this is a very lightweight piece of insurance that turns into a cocoon for somebody who gets injured, or could build a 3-person shelter really easily. It's really durable, and that's what makes it so expensive. But it is really light, and it lives in the bottom of the pack. Seems like a good thing to have. And then, okay, let's look at repair kit here. So zip ties, these are those high tensile 50-pound zip ties. I've looked around for multi-tools, and this Skeletool has worked really well because it has interchangeable bits, which I think is really important given the fact that people have such different bindings and boots. So having interchangeable bits and having it be a lightweight piece has been why I've gone with that. And then just some skin wax, more of a spring thing. Super glue and steel wool is a really key combination for repairing bindings. And if you tear a binding out of a ski, you can just squirt some super glue in there, tear off and stuff a little bit of the steel wool, and you can bind that same screw back in a hole that it was stripped out of. It'll bind up in a few minutes and it's bomb. And then fire starter spare binding screws. That's an Allen key that fits my boots. Small lighter, duct tape. And that's it. So maybe it gets the wheels rolling a little bit for what's in your kit. The reason that I like to separate out first aid, repair, and my tarp is that when we get into terrain where the days are bigger and the pack weight matters, then we can easily split it up as a crew, and then you're carrying very, very little. So, hope that helps. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you out there.